Welcome to this explainer on thyroid disorders. Today, we're taking a first principles look at how the body's ultimate metabolic engine operates. We're going to break down exactly how this incredible piece of biological hardware normally functions to keep you alive. And then we'll examine what happens when things go completely off the rails. So I want you to start by asking yourself something. What single system regulates your energy, your heart rate, and your body temperature all at the exact same time? Just imagine a master thermostat installed right inside of you. But, this thermostat doesn't just control heat. It simultaneously controls everything from how fast your heart beats to how your brain and skeleton develop. It's literally the difference between feeling totally wired or completely exhausted. That's the sheer power of the thyroid system, and understanding it really unlocks so much of human physiology. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the metabolic engine. Second, the HPT axis command center. Third, cellular machinery. Fourth, Graves' disease. And finally, iodine deficiency. Let's jump in. All right, section 1, the metabolic engine, specifically the thyroid gland. Let's dive straight into the physical hardware of this amazing system. The physical thyroid gland has a deceptively simple job, really. It synthesizes, stores, and releases essential thyroid hormones. But what makes it a true master engine is that these hormones don't just go to one specific place. They're released into the bloodstream and are picked up by specific receptors in literally every single tissue across your entire body. It's this massive, integrated network of regulatory signals that affects almost every cell you have. And that brings us to the really high stakes of thyroid action. This single organ is responsible for regulating your basal metabolic rate. It essentially sets the idle speed of your body's engine. It also drives absolutely crucial brain and skeletal development. And if that wasn't enough, it influences your cardiovascular function by regulating the specific genes involved in your heart rate and muscle contractility. If this system is off even a little bit, your whole body feels it. Section 2, the HPT axis command center, synthesis and regulation. Now that we know what the engine does, let's look at how it's actually controlled. This perfectly illustrates the chain of command, the Hypothalamic-Pituitary-Thyroid, or HPT axis. Think of this just like that thermostat we talked about earlier. The brain acts as the sensor, so the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are constantly monitoring your hormone levels, and they regulate the thyroid's output through a very strict negative feedback loop. When there are enough hormones floating around in the blood, the signal just shuts off, which prevents a system overload. Let's trace how this builds chronologically. Step 1, the regulation kicks off at the hypothalamus, which releases TRH into a specialized portal system. Step 2, that TRH travels to the anterior pituitary gland, stimulating it to release TSH, or thyroid-stimulating hormone. And then step 3, that TSH hits the thyroid gland itself, commanding it to synthesize and secrete T4 and T3 directly into the bloodstream. It's just a perfect, precise cascade of chemical communication. Moving on to section 3, cellular machinery, genomic and non-genomic effects. Let's zoom in from that macro command center down to the microscopic level to see how these hormones actually create energy. So when we talk about how thyroid hormones actually get the job done, we first have to talk about genomic effects. The active hormone T3 enters the cell and binds to high-affinity nuclear receptors located right inside the cell nucleus, specifically receptors known as TR-alpha and TR-beta. By doing this, it directly regulates gene expression and ultimately protein synthesis. But because it's literally rewriting the cellular blueprints, these effects are pretty slow. They often take hours or even days to fully manifest. But, the thyroid doesn't only work slowly. We have to contrast that slow nuclear process with non-genomic effects. These are rapid, on-the-fly actions that happen directly at the cell membrane, out in the cytoplasm, or right on organelles like your mitochondria. These non-genomic actions completely bypass the nuclear receptors, so it's really a dual-action system. You've got slow, long-term genetic changes paired with rapid, immediate cellular responses. The crucial point here is how this translates to real-world biology, like maintaining your body heat. It's a fascinating process called thermogenesis. The thyroid literally generates heat by jacking up the expression of specific proteins called uncoupling proteins, or UCPs, inside your brown adipose tissue. It essentially tells your fat cells to burn energy for the sole purpose of creating heat. It literally turns you into a walking human furnace. But to build all these hormones, the factory needs raw materials, right? Enter the sodium-iodide symporter, or the NIS symporter. This is an absolutely crucial, microscopic pump on the cellular level. Its one and only job is to grab circulating dietary iodide straight from your bloodstream and yank it into the thyroid follicular cells. Without this tiny little pump pulling in iodide from the foods you eat, the entire hormone synthesis process would just grind to a complete halt. Section 4. Graves' disease, pathogenesis. With the normal physiology established, what happens when this perfectly designed system gets hijacked? Graves' disease is a masterclass in autoimmune hijacking. It usually starts with a combination of susceptible genetics and environmental triggers, things like severe emotional stress, smoking, infections, or sometimes even iodine excess. This combo sets off an immune response where lymphocytes synthesize these rogue antibodies called thyroid-stimulating immunoglobulins, or TSIs. Now, this is important. Unlike Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which uses cell-destroying mechanisms to physically wipe out the thyroid, Graves' disease is a receptor-stimulating pathology. These TSI antibodies literally mimic the normal TSH signal. They bind to receptors and they continuously force the thyroid to overproduce hormones, totally ignoring the body's negative feedback loop. But here's the thing, this receptor-stimulating pathology rarely acts alone. Concomitant autoimmune responses happen all the time. Notably, the TPO enzyme gets targeted. Thyroperoxidase antibodies, or TPO antibodies, along with thyroglobulin antibodies, are present in up to 80% of patients with Graves' disease. Your immune system just becomes fundamentally confused. It's not just stimulating the gland with TSIs, but often mounting multiple concurrent autoimmune attacks against the very enzymes that build the hormones in the first place. And finally, Section 5, iodine deficiency and goiters, pathophysiology. Let's contrast that autoimmune overdrive with the exact opposite problem, a mechanical failure caused by the starvation of resources. Remember that NIS symporter pump we talked about? Well, if there's no iodine to pump, hormone production begins to fail. A dietary iodine deficiency leads to subtle but critical decreases in thyroid hormone production. And because of that brilliant negative feedback loop we learned about, the brain instantly senses the drop. This decrease from baseline causes the pituitary gland to basically panic, resulting in a massive spike in TSH secretion to try and force the failing thyroid to work harder. Let's trace the chronological fallout of this starvation. First, you have iodine depletion. Second, the subtle hormone decrease breaks the feedback loop. Third, the pituitary spikes TSH. And finally, step 4, that excessive, unrelenting TSH physically forces the thyroid cells to adapt. It causes increased cellularity and follicular hyperplasia. Basically, in a desperate attempt to capture non-existent iodine, the thyroid gland physically enlarges, mechanically forming a massive goiter or nodules right there in the neck. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. How does a microscopic shortage of a single dietary element, or just one confused antibody, manage to completely rewrite your physical architecture? I mean, from regulating the expression of your DNA in the nucleus, to generating physical body heat, to literally reshaping the tissues in your neck, the body's metabolic engine is as delicate as it is profoundly powerful. So keep this incredible biological balance in mind and never, ever underestimate the power of your inner thermostat.